It is that time again, my Chibits. It's time for another ReZero video. Now, I don't know how long this video will be. It might be longer than the episode. It might be shorter than the episode. It might be incredibly short. I have no idea. But I have a lot to talk about. And this episode leaves us on a pretty big cliffhanger, especially with Rom, which I'll get into that last, actually, because I want to go through the order of events of the episode. So, just a point-blank state, okay? Like, before I get into any details or reviewing or anything like that, I just want to talk about how triggered Beetlejuice got when he realized, that Subaru made fun of his gospel. He's like, I used it as a cup holder, a coaster, and I threw it aside after it got stained. I just threw it to the wind. And the way Beetlejuice got so triggered, he got so fucking pissed. Like, I love that scene. It's probably the best scene of the episode in terms of just laughing your ass off, because, look, you have to wear Beetlejuice, he's straight up, we know how powerful he is. Like, this man is crazy powerful. I mean, now that Subaru can see his unseen hands, he kind of has a weakness, but still, we know this man can do some damage. We've seen it. So, the thing is, this man straight up, he's talking to Subaru and all that, like, your pride and all that, and he's like, where's your gospel? Where's it at? Subaru, at first, it looked like he was going to try to lie and say something that, you know, might say he has the gospel, but he left it somewhere. But then he says, oh, my bad, I used it as a coaster, and then I threw it to the side. And Beetlejuice didn't even say shit. Like, this man, he didn't say anything at all. Like, he straight up, he was just like, and then all of a sudden, his unseen hands, he just see it pop out. This man got so triggered, he got so pissed off, and he went right after Subaru. That was just, yeah, that was one of the highlights of this episode. It was so good. So, let's get off of that. Let's talk about the beginning of this episode, and then work our way towards the end, and then, you know, for Beetlejuice and all that type of stuff. So, first things first. The stuff with Julius, or Julius, however you want to pronounce his name, I'm just going to call him Julius. Pretty much, Julius in this episode and Subaru, they have their talk. And as we know, with the events of last week's episode, it ended off with Julius coming to the front of the battlefield, and then Subaru sees him, and we know, they have their history. We know what Julius did to Subaru, and we know how Subaru was in the wrong, and what Julius did actually was a good thing. He was trying to save Subaru from getting killed by all the other knights, and Julius just beat the shit out of him for Subaru could continue on living, and that's the reason why Julius did it in the first place, even though Subaru was very disrespectful, and he was just horrible to the knights. So, I mean, it's still understandable how Subaru would be pissed off. I mean, if someone beat the shit out of you, okay, you're gonna be pissed off. Regardless if you're in the wrong or not, you're gonna be pissed off. That's just common human nature. You're just gonna be fucking mad. So Subaru's showing that anger and rage at the end of last week's episode and carrying over in this episode, it makes me happy. As I discussed at the end of my last review, that it makes this entire situation realistic, because as I said, Subaru, he's went through so much character development, so much change, where he's bettered himself, but even though he's bettered himself, he should not be able to overcome this jealousy, this hatred, or anything. He shouldn't be able to overcome it in a day or two. It's not a thing that could actually be realistic. But at the same time, I didn't want to see Subaru falling back in the exact same hole that he was already in. So this was a very touchy line that Subaru was treading, and how the writer was actually treading down this path. Because, I mean, one thing could have easily made it to where all the character development that Subaru got could have been reset and reverted, and then also you had it to where Subaru could have, like, kind of accepted Julius too fast, and would have made it seem rather fake and unrealistic. So it was a very touchy topic to deal with when it came to this episode, and when you saw to where how this episode handled it, it was very, very, very tasteful and very real. Because, honestly, I've actually seen this. I've actually seen the events that happened in this episode in real life. I've actually personally have experienced it. And I want to talk about what that beginning of the episode meant. So, Subaru and Julius, they have a talk. They start talking about their differences and all that, and as soon as Julius comes up to talk to Subaru, Subaru has this anger in him. You can tell he has this, like, attitude about him, the way he carries himself with his character, and his personality, and the way he's just talking. You can tell he's really pissed off. He's just angry, and the way he talks to Julius, it's like he's still upset. And Julius talks to Subaru, and he's like, oh, I'm sorry and all that, sorry about what happened or whatever, and then Subaru, you know, counteracts it, like, he talks to him, and he's like, oh, yeah, so, you know, you hurt me a while back and all that. Like, the entire conversation conversation with, you know, what happened in the past when Subaru got the shit beat out of him, and Julius wasn't even talking about that at all. He wasn't talking about that scene to when, you know, Julius beat him up. He wasn't talking about that. He, like, literally forgot about it, or he didn't necessarily forget. He kind of moved on. Like, for instance, he moved on after that, and he just let it behind him. Like, he left it behind his back. He continued moving forward. He didn't let it hold him down and chain him down like shackles to the ground. Subaru, however, he entered the conversation being very negative, and he also was instantly thinking about that. He's thinking about the past, and he was just thinking about any way he could attack this man, and Julius, he wasn't even thinking about that. He already had moved past that. He doesn't probably have any resentment or anger towards Subaru. Maybe a little bit, actually. Maybe a little bit, but still, he kind of moved past it, and Subaru wasn't, and he brought it up even though Julius wasn't talking about it, which goes to show you the attitude he had. Now, as that scene carried on, you had to where Subaru actually admits his faults. He actually states that, yes, what I did was wrong. I did some pretty horrible shit. I know I did. I understand what you were trying to do. I completely understand it now. I understand what I did was wrong. But at the same time, he's like, I still hate you. I still fucking hate you. And I'm like, yo, this is some realistic type of shit right here. Like, this is something you would see in actually real life. Like, let me bring up an example, okay? Let's say you have a fellow coworker, or let's say you have a person in your classroom. If you go to college, high school, whatever, you have someone in your classroom or at work, and let's just say you two are having to work side by side, or, you know, you have to do something on a project. You have to work very closely. Like, let's say you have to work together. If you do not work together, something is not going to get accomplished. And that's kind of what goes on in this episode. Julius and Subaru, they're like co-workers. Subaru states, I hate you. I hate you so much. But even though I hate you, even though I can't stand to look at you, I know I need to, at the very least, put up with you for we can get along and actually handle the mission or the objective we set out to do. So Subaru, and the way he displayed these emotions, it was a very realistic thing to the actual real world and society of how it works. Yeah, I'm willing to bet majority of you probably have heard this every so often, maybe once in your life, to where someone comes up to you and says, even if you dislike this person, at the very least, just put on a smile or something, or try to get along and get the job done. I mean, you may not like the person, but at the very least, try to get along, or at the very least, not talk to him. And that's kind of what happens here. It's where Subaru, he goes into this mature mode to where he's pissed off still. He's angry. He hasn't completely forgiven him entirely. But at the very least, he's willing to work together with him to actually focus on the bigger picture. So the way that was displayed, beautiful character development, beautiful characterization, and a very realistic way to settle this dispute between these two characters, because it's not necessarily entirely over. The dispute between Julius and Subaru is still on the table. There's still, well, Julius, I highly doubt he's mad with Subaru. I'm willing to bet he's just the reason why he said, I won't try to befriend you or whatever. I don't think he's really mad with him. If Subaru really tried to say he was sorry or try to be friends, I willing to bet Julius would allow him. But at this time, though, because of the pride that Subaru has, and also what type of person he is, the way he acted in this episode was the best we're probably going to get for now. And I mean, he did try to make up at the end of the episode, but that's for another discussion later on. So yes, the way that was settled, I'm happy, I'm satisfied with. It was handled in a way that did not feel fake. It was handled in a way that did not feel forced, and it was in a way that I personally can enjoy. So getting off of that, let's talk about the beginning of this episode. Besides the Julius stuff, let's talk about the conversation Subaru had with everyone that he's taking with him to take down the witch's cult. So, as we found out, a bunch of the members were actually sending out messages to Amelia and everybody else in the village that's near Amelia. They were sending messages over there to tell them to evacuate. The merchants and stuff were picking them up, and when they were carrying them away from the village for everybody to be safe. For instance, everybody was getting evacuated and notified before the battle even begun in this episode. So by the time that Subaru and them already launched the attack against Beetlejuice and his entire men at the witch's cult, majority of the people were either A, already notified, or they already evacuated. And as we get to see after, the message, when, they're talking about how everybody was sent a message, like Amelia was sent one, we get to shift over to Amelia, and how she seems to be very exhausted. She's very tired, and Puck pops out and starts talking about, oh, you seem very exhausted and all that, and then they start talking about, like, a barrier and all that in the forest. And if I had to place any bets what we saw at the end of this week's episode most likely was that barrier. When Ram popped up, I'm willing to bet that when that happened at the end, I'm willing to bet that like the entire change of scenery was most likely thanks to the barrier that maybe Amelia set, and the reason why she was exhausted. That's probably what's going on there, which I'll get into that later on as I continue on the episode review. So, Amelia was exhausted, and as we know, they all were sent a message. They were all already sent a message, so they were fully aware that majority of a lot of men from the different, people that were candidates for the next ruler of the kingdom, Amelia was already fully aware that you had it to where Subaru was coming with this large army to take out the witch's cult, and so they already knew what was about to happen. So it wasn't like it came out of nowhere. So you had it to where that was said and notified, which carries over to the ending part of the episode where Ram pops up and Subaru gets to see her. And as I said, I'm going to save that for later on. So let me carry on with, the episode into the next events. So we move over into Subaru encountering the witch's cult. Now this scene right here is something that we need to take note of, because there's a lot of details hidden throughout this entire witches scene, like, with Beetlejuice and Subaru, that has a lot of weight and meaning. I'm willing to bet it has something very important to do with the future of the story in the series, because when Subaru walks up, okay, he's like, man, do I really smell that bad? Because all the witches, like, cult popped up around him, and he pretty much ordered them to, just disappear and all that. I want to go meet, the Archbishop Sloth, which is Beetlejuice, and he just told them to get out of the way, and they all listened to him. They completely listened to him, they got away, and he walked over to where Beetlejuice was. Now, the conversation was very typical of how Beetlejuice has conducted himself in previous episodes. He introduces his full name, he pretty much says how love, how the love surrounds him and then, surrounds Subaru, and eventually he gets into the gospel. He brings up the gospel. He pulls out of his shirt, and he brings up the gospel. Now, this part right here is the interesting thing that I need to dive into. I briefly talked about this on Twitter, but I'm bringing it up here because I want to go a little bit more in depth and explain my thoughts. So, you had it to where Beetlejuice stated, I'm looking at the gospel. Like, he read through the entire gospel. Like, he skimmed through it real quick. He's like, I don't see no account of you. Like, there's no account of you in this gospel. So, what good fortune have you brought me? Like, what good fortune is the reason you're here right now? And are you, like, pride? Which I'll get into that in a second. So, he's saying, like, you're not in my gospel. And this is very strange. When he says you're not in my gospel, what is he trying to imply? What is Beetlejuice trying to imply about Subaru? Is he saying that Subaru is not in the gospel to where he is the sin of pride? Or is he not in the gospel as, like, he should not be here at this time? Or he's not in the book at all, and maybe because Subaru has returned by death and he kind of disrupts the natural flow of the world, since he can come back and change events constantly, maybe that's why he's not in the gospel. So what I'm hinting at or getting at is that what if the gospel has some form of messages, like for instance, like future events or something that could possibly come to pass? Like, think about this, it's like the Bible. Think about the Bible, how, in the book of Revelations, it talks about things that are to come, eventually, later down the road, maybe this year, next year, thousands of years. The point I'm getting at is, it might be just like that. The gospel might talk about future events, maybe things that could happen, and Subaru is not mentioned at all throughout the gospel, and the reason for this could possibly be, since Subaru can die and come back, the gospel can't necessarily say anything about him because it doesn't know what he can do. He's like an anomaly. He has no actual set path. He can do anything he wants, and the book can't really judge what path he's gonna take. And so when you had to where, Beetlejuice is like, you're not in my gospel, there's no account of you, what good fortune do you bring me? That might be the reason why he's asking. Or the book, just tells future events and Subaru's just not a part of it. One or the other. But I want to bet with the way that line was said, it has something very important to do with the future of the story. And since Subaru did grab the gospel and is carrying it with him, most likely that's going to play a role later on down the road when he finally manages to actually read the gospel. Which, that is the next thing I want to talk about. So, Subaru manages to get the gospel. And as he gets this gospel after, Beetlejuice dies, this is the thing. Everybody freaks out. Like, when they realize what it is, it's like the gospel of the witches cult, like the sacred text. They all freak out, and they throw the book, or they don't want to look at it, they don't want to read it, because if you read it or look at it, it means that you're like a certified member of the witches cult. Like, you're a part of the witches cult. And only people that are like, the bishops or whatever, like the biggest people amongst the witches cult, have these gospels. And Subaru, he grabs it, he starts looking at it, and he's like, I can't read this at all. And they're explaining it to him. The way they were reacting to the entire situation was like they were saying that Subaru will get cursed, or whoever touches this book will get cursed by the book. And I feel like that's what it's trying to imply, letting us know that maybe the book has a will of its own, or maybe it changes, or it's like a superstition. Maybe they think the book is cursed, like if you touch it, it changes and warps your mind to where you believe in the witch or something, and you're like Beetlejuice. That might be a possibility. So who knows, maybe Subaru carrying this book might fuck him up down the road, might fuck with his mind or something, might make it to where the witch's curse gets even stronger, maybe the scent of him gets stronger, maybe, you know, Satola that's behind him gets more control of him. I mean, there's a lot of possibilities here, but the way they were reacting to the book, they were literally acting like the book was cursed, and if you even look at it or touch it, it can curse you and make you a part of the witch's cult. So, who knows? Maybe Subaru is, you know, immune to it. I mean, he's a little bit different. As we know, he's kind of been implied to be, you know, the bishop of, you know, pride or whatever, so there is a possibility he might be immune to its effects, or he might eventually be corrupted, or it could cause problems down the road, but there's definitely something going on there when he actually got the book. Now, the next thing, too, I need to talk about is how the gospel is entirely. Now, as I already discussed, it might talk about future events kind of like the Bible, or maybe it just can't, you know, have any account of Subaru because, you know, he's like an anomaly, you know, he has no actual a route or path in the series because he could take any path since he could constantly die and come back. Maybe that's why he's not in there. But what if the book, each gospel that each, you know, archbishop gets is different? Like, that's never stated. We don't know a whole lot of details about this gospel, but they are sacred texts. That's what we found out. So if I think of anything like that, I think of the Bible. But who's to say that this, you know, gospel is necessarily the same with all the other bishops? Like, what if they're different? What if each individual gospel has their own writing in it? Like, for instance, let's say the sin of gluttony, okay? The sin of gluttony has the gospel, and he pulls it out, and the writing in it is completely different from what sloth had. Maybe the writing in it's different, or maybe where if a different sin grabs the book, what if the writing in the book changes? Like, I've seen a series and, you know, different, you know, literature stories and stuff do stuff like this. For instance, make it to where, like, one character picks up a book, he sees this writing, and when another character picks up the book, it's an entirely different book. Like, it's different pages and stuff. What if Subaru picking up the book allowed it to where he has different writing than what Beetlejuice was able to see? So yeah, there's a lot of questions this, you know, brings up with the introduction of this gospel, and now Subaru carrying it with him. Now, besides that, let's get on to the entire scene with the fight, okay, with, you know, Beetlejuice's death. So Beetlejuice dies, and the entirety of this episode, I'm like, whoa, this feels way too easy. It's way too easy the way Beetlejuice died. Like, I mean, out of all the shit he's put Subaru through, what he did to Rim and all that, I'm like, there's just no way this character can die that easy. It's not a thing. There's no way that the writer that's already wrote such a good story as is already at this point would kill off a character like Beetlejuice that's had so much impact on the readers or watchers of the series. There's just no way the writer would kill him off that easy. So when he was laying on the ground, cut in half and dead, I'm like, no, there's just no way he's dead. As the person watching the episode, I'm like, there's no way. And then Subaru, the way he was reacting, he acted like us. Like, Subaru was us, the audience, in this episode. He's like, is he gonna get back up? Is he gonna get back up? Like, he's looking at him, and he thinks, like, this was too easy. Like, is he gonna, you know, is he gonna get back up? And, I mean, he was looking at him like, and then eventually he had it to where there was a double tap, and Beetlejuice's body got blew up, completely dead. So, in a way, I like how the writer allowed us to breathe easy and actually fool us in thinking he was really dead, because, I mean, it was like how you normally would think. Like, that felt too easy. And then, you know, how his body got blew up, and then how he got cut in half. You're like, oh, I guess he really is dead. I mean, there's just no fucking way he's coming back. And then eventually it led it into where we found out that the Bishop of Sloth, you know, the Sin of Sloth, they have the ability, or Beetlejuice has the ability, to use his fingers and kind of be copied into them. Now, this isn't really dived into. We don't really have a lot of details on how this ability works. But if I had to place any bets on the table, I'm going to assume it has something to do with, or something very similar to do with Return by Death. Now, as we know, Subaru has a curse to where if he dies, he comes back and he has checkpoints. We don't know how it works. I've talked about this in other videos, Fury videos, and stuff like that. We don't really know how it works, so I'm just not going to dive into that. But Beetlejuice, since he is an archbishop, and he is Sloth, and he has all this love, he has the gospel of the witch's cult, there is a possibility that he might have not exact same ability as Subaru, but he has a similar ability. For instance, he might be able to reincarnate himself, and maybe all the different bishops have something similar to this. I mean, think about this for a second, okay? Look at, you know, the well, okay? The well that was like the sin of gluttony. the well was able to replicate itself and clone itself to extend its life. In a way, it's not the same, but it's similar to Subaru in a way to extend your life, or constantly come back. That's kind of what the well was doing, copying itself and bringing it back with, duplicates. And then Beetlejuice has the power to where all of his, archbishops or the Sin of Sloth, everybody that's in the witch's cult that's part of Sloth, he can actually go into them, and then he can actually use their body, and it's like he becomes them. So, if you look at it like this, each leader of the witch's cult has some form of ability to extend their life, or come back or some way. And I like the way that was displayed. This allows us to know that maybe Subaru isn't the only one that might have ability to where he can come back from the dead constantly, and eventually he might, come to find out more characters that could possibly do something similar to him. Now, Beetlejuice, since he does come back, okay, and he comes back in a girl's body, it literally makes my entire sentence of what I said, Beetlejuice Best Girl, actually a reality, because he literally was in a girl's body. And they're like, what the fuck? So, Beetlejuice became a girl. So, yeah, literally now, Beetlejuice is Best Girl, like, hands down, Best Girl. So, jokes aside, though, Beetlejuice drags Subaru through the forest. And as we know, the unseen hand is an ability to where only like an archbishop would have. Like, it was only something unique to Beetlejuice. He was the only one that could use this ability, but apparently this person, this girl, had it and was using it. So there's only two ways you can kind of interpret this. Either A, once the main body of, let's say, Beetlejuice or the Sin of Sloth dies, he goes into another finger. He goes into another one of the, lower levels of, the witch's cult. Like, someone that was in his Sin of Sloth group. And he goes into them and he becomes them. And it's kind of like he's being reincarnated in their body. Or B, the ability of the unseen hand is just passed on to the next person in line. Probably the next stronger something, maybe the ability unseen hand is just passed on. That could be also what's going on here. Whatever the case may be, though, most likely it is Beetlejuice because of the way the character is reacting towards Subaru. The entire speech patterns, the way they were talking, to the way that you saw the fingers damaged and bitten. Like, it looked like the fingers were bitten, but it actually, if you looked even closer, it seemed like the nails were completely removed in a way. But whatever really it was, though, still seeing how this person had a lot of characteristics that were similar to Beetlejuice, I'm willing to bet it was him. But there was something that was very off about this entire exchange between this character and Subaru when he was tied up against a tree with the unseen hands. And saying that he is like the sin of pride and all that. He's definitely pride the way he's reacting and, just all this, stubbornness that he's pulling up. The female Beetlejuice put their hand inside their shirt, and usually, as we've seen Beetlejuice do multiple times, he would pull out the gospel. But this time, he didn't. And it was weird how Beetlejuice reacted, because you would think, since he knows he has an ability in different fingers, that he wouldn't have the gospel on him since it's a new body. Like, it's an entirely new body. So, even if Subaru stole it, like, we know he stole it, shouldn't he believe that maybe his old corpse, his old body, has the gospel on it? Or did he believe that the gospel would, like, transfer over to this new body? Like, is that what, this female Beetlejuice was thinking? Maybe thinking the gospel would somehow teleport to this new body? Or did this person not really remember what happened and believe that this was the original Beetlejuice since the beginning? And that's kind of why, Beetlejuice put the hand in the pocket and tried to pull out the gospel. There's a lot of questions with that combo, too. A lot of confusing things that really kind of make us question more about this ability and what really is going on there. But getting off of that, though, let's talk about the little red dot that popped up and saved Subaru. So it was a spirit. And as we know, spirit users are very rare in this world. We found out about this a while back, a long while back. And as I said when I was doing my theory crafting video with Satala, I was rewatching episodes to kind of get a theory together on, what maybe Satala's true in-game goal is. And as I was rewatching episodes, and they were talking about how, Emilia, she is actually someone that is a spirit user. Like, she is a very rare person indeed to be able to use spirit magic. When you think about it like this, if you remember at the time when Subaru went into the forest to fight the beast, the dogs and stuff, he got a blessing from Emilia. She gave him a blessing of the spirits. And when that red dot popped up and it was a spirit, the only case it could be is Amelia's blessing or buff on Subaru actually saving him and saving his life, and that's how he was able to kind of survive at that scene. Now, you're probably asking, why the fuck did this not pop up already? Like, shouldn't it have already popped up in the previous timelines when Subaru was strapped down thanks to Beetlejuice and Beetlejuice killed Rim right in front of him? Shouldn't that spirit have popped up at that time? Well, the thing is, majority of the timelines we have seen, okay, or the majority of the, places we have seen when it comes to, let's say, ReZero, majority of the times when Subaru gets in danger, Amelia's already dead. Like, she's usually already dead, or Subaru's in a part of an area to where a spirit wouldn't necessarily help him to begin with, or you wouldn't really find spirits there to begin with either. For instance, that one time when Subaru was locked up in the cave, I mean, I highly doubt there might be spirits there. I mean, as you saw the way Beetlejuice reacted, he seemed to be absolutely terrified of a spirit. He was just shitting himself when that spirit popped up, and it wasn't really doing any damage. It was just rotating around Beetlejuice, and it was like, spirit, spirit, and just started freaking out, and the unseen hands just started smashing trees all the way around from a large distance. So, why would an archbishop just freak out over a tiny little spirit? Like, why? Unless it did something to them, maybe fucked with their mind or something, and the reason why maybe the archbishop and all them, the Sinisloth and the witches cult chose that cave could possibly be because it negates spirits or something. Maybe spirits can't, work in there or something. That's kind of why Subaru never had help to begin with when he was locked up. But regardless, though, majority of the times that when Subaru was in danger or mortal peril is to when Amelia was dead. So that's something I wanted to bring up. So maybe that's why we never seen it before, but most likely that red spirit was thanks to Amelia's blessing that she gave Subaru a while back, and that's why he got out of the situation. So let's talk about the scene with Wilhelm and how he gave this pep talk to Subaru and pretty much point blank told him that you need to be strong. And Subaru at first, he was kind of hearing Wilhelm talk to him, saying like, you need to constantly continue moving forward, you don't need to give up and all that. And this entire conversation seemed very stereotypical that you would see in a shonen or a light novel series. But the way it was done was a little bit different and distinct compared to what we normally see. And once again, ReZero shitting on the classic, generic, shitty light novel series. You get to see how ReZero stands amongst the rest. For instance, when you saw Wilhelm giving this pep talk, just, pepping him up and all that, giving him this encouragement, you have it to where Subaru comes to the idea like, so you want me to get stronger. You want me to get stronger. And then you had it to where Wilhelm's like, no, you need to be strong. And what he was stating in that moment is that, Subaru, you don't need to get stronger. I'm not telling you to get physically stronger. I'm not telling you to become like me and being able to freaking, ski on top of a well. I'm telling you that you are already strong to begin with when it comes to your entire mental state. You are very strong. Do not give up. Do not go in that depressed state. And he was pretty much saying, don't go into what you were once before. Even though Wilhelm doesn't really know what Subaru was going through, he still stated things that Subaru would obviously understand. He's like, I want you to be strong. You're strong enough mentally, and just don't give up. Continue to kick and scream regardless of what happens. Even if your legs are shattered, continue to drag yourself by the hands. If your arms are shattered, pull yourself with your chin. Just continue on moving regardless of what happens. Do not give up. And so this completely goes along with what Subaru's development was. It's like a full circle right here. The development of Subaru with Wilhelm giving him this pep talk to say, do not go into that state you once were. Continue down this path you've set, and do not think you are weak. You actually are very strong mentally. So I like that scene. I like that little pep talk Wilhelm gave to Subaru. It was something I did not expect at all, and I definitely give compliments to the writer of the series to do something like that. Now, getting off of that scene, let's talk about the conclusion of the episode. So this wasn't something that, maybe Ram wasn't prepared for. Like, she knew what was happening, what was probably going to try to go through the barrier, so she was probably close to the barrier waiting for anyone to try to enter that might be evil, and then she would try to kill them. And since we do know Subaru, in this episode, he picked up the gospel, which we don't know necessarily if the gospel might increase his scent or whatever, because, I mean, look, you had to where after he got the gospel, Beetlejuice started talking to Subaru and was like, you have the smell of an archbishop. Like, the smell you're giving off is literally the status of an archbishop. You are definitely pride. So maybe the gospel is already affecting Subaru and making it to where he smells even worse. Or maybe he already smelt like that to begin with. And, now it's just so obvious when he walks through a barrier. Someone like, Ram, she would instantly notice the scent and be like, holy shit, this smells like an evil son of a bitch. And then see Subaru. So that's a possibility of what was going on there. Of why Ram was actually there waiting for Subaru. She sensed it, detected it, smelt the scent, and was like, this is probably an evil person, but then realized it was Subaru and everything is fine. But things could still probably hit the fan. Shit could still hit the fan since, you know, you had to where he smells like the witch. It's such a high level. We know how Ram feels about the witch's cult and all that. So anything can happen here. Shit can go south rather quickly, depending on how it goes. But yeah, there's a lot of things here that I believe that many might kind of misunderstand. Maybe think that maybe Ram might be a finger for, you know, the sloth, the witch's cult, when it comes to, you know, like, let's say Beetlejuice. Maybe they all believe that, you know, Ram might be a part of that, but I highly doubt that. I really doubt she's a part of the witch's cult, especially with the connection what the witch's cult did to her and her sister. I just highly doubt that. Most likely it's thanks to the barrier, since they were all pre-warned, and Subaru has such a distinct smell. That is why she's probably there. So that's about it when it comes to this episode of ReZero. A very, 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 very good episode. Holy shit, it was a wonderful episode. Can't wait to see what happens next. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'm probably missing something. I probably forgot to talk about something. Oh, yeah. There is one thing I actually want to talk about before I end this video. It was the scene with Beetlejuice when, you know, he was talking to Subaru, when he was like, you know, oh, I had a coaster and I threw outside the gospel. When Beetlejuice, like, moved, like, he slid, okay? He slid closer to Subaru. I like that animation right there. That was a really good usage of animation in his character, because it added a very creepy tone. I like that tone of the way that was done, so props to that. Props to the animators for these little key scenes throughout the episode that really just add the immersion to ReZero even better. So, I actually like that type of stuff. There's a lot of scenes like that happen in this episode, but I don't have the time to go through every individual scene. But stuff like that, seeing Beetlejuice like slide on the floor closer to Subaru, I enjoy that type of stuff. So, yeah. You all have a wonderful day or night wherever you live. Please be safe. I love you all. Chibi out.